You're tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
This is how Toronto police were handling a protest in Toronto over the weekend.
I told him they can't come back, otherwise he would have said, okay, I understand.
Okay, I'll just ask, just so... Sorry, it's the person with the vest?
Jihad? Yeah. And then the guy, the guy with the yellow vest on walking.
How did you get coffee from the police?
Well, not the police. Someone has brought it for us, but the police won't let them in. So the police are now becoming our little messengers between us. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on.
So that is a gentleman in a keffiyeh. I'm using gentleman in the most liberal way possible, which has been taken up as the sign of resistance against the Israelis, against Jews, being hand-delivered a carton of coffee by a Toronto police officer, right up there with RCMP officers helping people with their luggage across Roxham Road in Quebec. Now, apparently Toronto police didn't buy the coffee. No, they were just delivering it to the point where the protesters blocking a bridge in a Jewish neighborhood. Remember the talk about critical infrastructure a little while ago? Yeah. Blocking a bridge on Avenue Road in Toronto, getting hand-delivered coffee by Toronto police. Now, the Toronto police chief has said that he is launching a full inquiry into everything that went down on that one day. But I think it's true the Toronto police have picked their side here. And it is people who are in Toronto's Jewish community, not even in the community, just Jewish people in Toronto, that I believe should be very nervous about what is likely to come here. Ari Goldkind is a criminal lawyer in Toronto. It's always good to talk to him. He joins us now. Ari, good to talk to you, sir. I mean, you as a criminal lawyer, I know, have probably a greater skepticism of police than many people do. But what's your read when you see this?
So, Andrew, I appreciate that introduction, and let's not leave out that I am a Jew in Toronto. Now, I don't believe in the man upstairs. I believe in Judaism culturally, and that there is something unique about my culture. This has nothing to do with religion. So I can tell you that this is, as somebody, Andrew, that you would know has been very outspoken to support the police. Let's be very clear about this, Andrew. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, and I make a very healthy living going after cops. But when I'm not in court, and sometimes even when I am in court, I am very supportive of the police and what they have to deal with. That stops today on this issue. This is one of the most disgraceful situations I have ever seen in Toronto policing, and I've been doing what I do for over 20 years. You look at the double standard here, you look at the way the rule of law has been tossed to the side. Somehow Tamara Leach, Chris Barber, truckers who didn't want to be forced to take a vaccine that doesn't really work, and I'm pro-vaccine, and I'm still saying that, who wanted to be able to earn a living, pay their mortgage. Somehow they were threats to Canada. But these people, as you mentioned, Andrew, who are nowhere near a consulate, nowhere near a legislature, have specifically picked a Jewish area. And not only were they smart to do it because they wanted to test what would the pushback be. Well, the pushback is absolute submission. And people who understand the word submission and how it comes into play here, I'm using it for a very specific term, because this has as much to do with Palestine, Andrew, as you and me flying to the moon tonight, which ain't going to happen. This is purely Jew hate. This is purely Canada's fastest growing demographic, proving that not only do they have the Trudeau government in their pocket, Mr. Poilievre, and I say this, Andrew, I'm a fan of his. He's been extraordinarily silent about this. Doug Ford has been extraordinarily silent about this. People are unwilling or afraid to take a line in the sand here because they know where the votes are. And I can assure you that Jews like me and people with the last name Goldkind, the politicians have done the math. My numbers don't matter anymore. My demographic doesn't matter anymore. Then you add into the end of my answer, Andrew, the Toronto police being feckless, in my view, aiding and abetting ongoing crimes. There are ongoing crimes here. Just masking at an assembly is a crime that got people arrested at the G20. Just the coffee and the donuts and the mealy-mouthed, feckless response from the chief of police who's anything else, if this isn't a wake-up call to non-Jewish Canadians, Andrew, forget that there aren't, I'm a dwindling number. But if you think this is just about Jews, Andrew, or your audience say, oh, it's just the Jews, don't worry about it, I'm sorry. I'm at the top of their food chain simply because I'm Jewish. But when they're done with me, you're the next infidel. And that, hopefully, is something that the Canadian public is waking up to.
You gave a lot there that I want to unpack, so I'll try to be somewhat systematic.
And I apologize for that, but you can see I get very wound up about
this.
And
as you should. I mean, for me, it offends me on so many levels, but for you, it's personal. And
it's personal.
I know a lot of people that live in that part of Toronto, and I can't overstate what you've said there about where they're protesting. I have a very, very high threshold, as the convoy demonstrates, for how disruptive protests should be. But I think there's a caveat there, which is that they should be targeted towards governments. I believe there is a different standard of blocking Wellington Street than there is of blocking some private residence because you don't like someone. And that was why when we saw the displays against businesses in Toronto, it was very, very different. And when we see this, again, even if we want to say that they have a right to make their point legally, which is dubious, you have to ask the why. And why are they on Avenue Road? Why are they on that bridge? And I think is a very, very crucial point here. And you're right, because it is about Jews. It is not about Israel.
And let me put it to you like this, because you have a very intelligent audience, Andrew, that is not heard by elites. It is not heard. Mm-hmm. It does not count. I consider a lot of people watching you the forgotten, but they're the actual Canadians that make this country work every day, day in and day out. And I pose this question, Andrew, to your audience. This will be a shorter one because it's your show and I don't want to dominate it, even though I have said what we're watching.
I dominate on your show when I'm on. It's all good.
You do, and I love your voice, but this is all about submission to a force from the East. Anybody knows what I'm saying? That's what this is. If you don't understand what I'm saying, just read demographics. Just read how many Jews are left in the world and my birth rates, and just read about the other religion and that demographic and that birth rate. Just read the difference in numbers. I can say them, but people think I'm making it up. 1.8 billion and growing of the religion that is dominating Canada, 15 million and dwindling of people with the last name Goldkind. But here's the question that I pose to your audience, who I think are continually forgotten in this country. If there was exactly what we're seeing here with a Jewish residential neighborhood, just for your audience across Canada, Andrew, this is a Jewish residential neighborhood. There are delis there. There are Jewish delis. There is nothing of any government, any infrastructure, anything there, just for people to understand this. Now imagine if the same thing was done in an Islamic area, or in an area where there is a mosque or just a generally significant Muslim population. There would be fire and brimstone. Mm-hmm. And I say this, I'm not being facetious, Andrew. There would not only be fire and brimstone from Trudeau, who, remember, when there was the hijab hoax, was on it like white on rice. He was completely silent here for about a week. There would be fire and brimstone from politicians. There would be fire and brimstone from mass media, not just True North and people who have to do the journalism. Karima, you saw the video.
Yeah.
Why is that not? Why is she the one where the viral video has gone worldwide versus, I mean, look, I'm a big fan of mass media. You know, I do a lot of television, Andrew. I'm like, let's be real about this. But again, then you ask yourself, if this was around a mosque or a generally Muslim area in Toronto, of which there are many very specific ones, there would be fire and brimstone and hell to pay. But as your audience is probably thinking rhetorically, no Jew or Christian, despite how passionately we might feel about an issue, would ever do what we see these men doing. And these men, by the way, Andrew, all either on the public dole or at the bank of overseas laundered mummy and daddy money. And many of your audience doesn't realize, Andrew, that you are paying the food, rent, and shelter of these men that are wishing that I be dumped into the sea. It's outrageous. It's obnoxious. But here, because I am a lawyer, Andrew, it is also unlawful. And the police are not only enabling it, they are aiding and abetting it. Not one of your viewers, Andrew, if there was a crime in progress, would be able to aid and abet live on video and not get arrested. But I'm sorry, we're now doing Timmy's and coffee runs and helping them blockade. It's astounding to me. And as you've seen, because you've been on my show and you and I have debated this, I do believe this is the beginning of the end. I think you're a bit more optimistic than me, but hopefully this is a wake-up call to people throughout this country, because certainly it's being watched around the world.
One of the challenges, and we saw this especially during the convoy protests, is you get police that say, well, we need to get our marching orders from political leaders. And then you get leaders in government that say, well, we don't direct police. And you end up with a lot of buck passing here. And in the end, no one gets done. So where is the leadership supposed to come from? Is it supposed to be the Toronto Police Service that unilaterally go in there and say, we're going to deal with this? Or do you need to get a Doug Ford to come out and say, this is the expectation?
So that's such a wonderful question, because it's, passing the buck, which is what these people do better than anybody else. The right hand doesn't speak to the left. I am tired of watching these politicians. Ontario's Solicitor General, I use that word specifically. Ontario's Solicitor General is doing nothing but tweeting. He's tweeting that this is unacceptable. You're the frigging Solicitor General.
He's
Just
also Jewish, I should point out as well.
Michael Kersner. I mean, James Past. Look, and I'm sure these are good people. If they joined us right now, we'd have a grown-up adult discussion. I'm not, but you're not Ari Goldkind tweeting. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I take cases. I'm not the Solicitor General. And to see these people sitting on Twitter, I mean, using their thumbs, to your question, they shouldn't have to do anything. The Toronto Police brass, this is not even a frontline policing issue to me, Andrew, as much as I have no problem throwing anybody under the bus. These frontline officers who stand around and watch death threats be issued, let's not forget that little event in the Eaton Centre that the police are themselves standing with their hands behind their backs, handcuffed. There's a word for people like this. I'm not even going to say it, but it's a word that is in adult movies where they're just standing around like feckless. I don't want to say it. At the end of the day, you cannot have a police force that picks and chooses who gets to commit crimes and who doesn't. And I can make so many of the points you've probably made before I joined you this afternoon, Andrew, about the double standard of the Freedom Convoy, bank accounts frozen. The second in the G20 that protesters masked, the second they concealed their identity, which many of these ghoulish and ghastly Jew haters are proud to do live on video, the police step in. And Andrew, just for your audience to know what the police standard is, because a lot of people think just go in and, it's a reasonable ground to lay a charge. Doesn't mean there should be a conviction. Doesn't mean you worry about a good defense lawyer like me or the thousands of good defense lawyers can get them out of the charge. Is there a reasonable ground to lay the charge? And I can lay out for you, Andrew, right now, and I won't do it, 4 or 5 sections of the criminal code that a first-year moronically woke, dumb, unmeritorious first-year law student in so many of our crappy new law schools in Ontario and in Canada would be able to look at and say, yep, I'm watching that crime happen right on video. And for the police to stand there and do nothing, I don't even care about the politicians being mealy-mouthed. I care about the police saying, we're trying to help or de-escalate. And what they're really saying to you, Andrew, is these men, these Jew haters, are so violent and so unpredictable and so predisposed to violence that if we move in, it's going to create a riot rather than quelling this. I'm sorry. What a lack of courage. And by the way, what a complete dereliction of duty.
Very well said, Ari. Just to end on a very, very distinct but lighter note, do I understand correctly that this is a bit of a special day for you?
It is, and I didn't know that you know that, but it is
Someone
a very
gave me a
special
little
day.
heads up during the interview. Well, I won't ask you how old, but I will say a very happy birthday. We are very well served as a country by having you doing what you do. So thank you very
Well, I
much, Ari.
appreciate that, and hopefully your audience watching me right now doesn't think I look the big 5-0, but apparently it's a crazily significant. I can't even believe I'm 50, Andrew. It's
I didn't know you
insane
were
to me.
50. I just knew it was your birthday. I didn't know it was a milestone birthday.
I am 50, and it feels insane to me because I still feel like an 18 to 22-year-old, same exact person, bigger bills, bigger mortgage, bigger responsibility, but exact same guy. So I can't figure out how I am saying I am 50 years old. I just don't get it.
Well, you've got the energy and the vigor of an 18 to 22-year-old, but with much more experience at doing what you do. Well, happy birthday, Ari, and thank you so much for coming on today.
Always good to be with you, Andrew.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.